So, what I wanted to discuss today is one of the most popular or most common questions that I get is about removing ego from trading. I've been working through the second of two Ruth Barons Roosevelt books that I really recommend all traders read. Number one being The 12 Habitudes of Highly Successful Traders. It's a short, easy to grasp, like kind of like flip it open, read something, and you're going to get value out of it. That's a great one. But this one is called Exceptional Trading, the Mind Game. It's a second book of hers, one that I feel like goes before the 12 Habitudes, but they really just work well together. And what I wanted to do today is reference her book to answer that question because I think she lays it out super well. And the question is, again, just how to remove ego from trading. I think people ask that question sometimes without even knowing what ego is. So first, we're going to define when, then, and what ego, like what the ego can do for us. We're going to define it. And then I want to talk about living beyond the ego and just these perceptual positions that we can take towards our ego that sometimes help us view it from a different point of view. So she says here, what is the definition of ego? The Oxford English Dictionary definition lists the following definitions. Ego, the I, the conscious thinking subject as opposed to the non-ego object. In every act of consciousness, we distinguish a self or an ego, hence egohood or individuality. Egotism, the too frequent use of the word I, hence the practice of self-talking about oneself and one's doing. To egotize is to talk or to write egotistically. Egomania is morbid egotism. Now, how ego can translate out and be shown in our trading, some of the symptoms of egotizing trading would be the following. She says it's not putting in stop losses because the ego doesn't want to be proven wrong, right? Nobody likes that. Hesitating before putting on a trade, the ego wants reassurance before it begins. Overtrading, which is the ego wanting to prove itself big time. How about getting stuck in a trade? This is when the ego has intertwined itself with a trade and is holding on for dear life. I can't cut it out. The ego doesn't want to be wrong again. And number 5 here, adding to a losing trade. The ego digs its hole deeper in a massive effort to crawl out. And the last one, number 6, grabbing profit too soon. The ego wants the pat on the back. All of those 6 things are the way that ego can show itself in our trading. Jim Paul tells a fascinating story of personalizing a trade in his book, What I Learned Losing $1 Million. He was bullish on soybean oil, and it was heavily invested. The market was going up precipitously, I think is how you say it. Sorry. One day in late August that year, he made about $248,000 in one day alone. It was an incredible high for him, $250,000 in a day. The following Monday, he was at the desk waiting for the market to open. He was certain he would be up at least another 50 grand. Not so much. The market had started the day down and proceeded to continue on the down. He lost an average of $20,000 to $25,000 a day for months. At some point, he started getting his clients out with small profits or small losses, but he himself stayed in the market. This was his trade. This was his big trade. He was going to make $10 million on this trade. He and his future were committed to this trade. You can already tell where this is going, right? By the middle of October, Jim was in trouble. So we went from August to October. He was getting margin calls and borrowing from friends. By the beginning of November, the next month, he was in trouble big time. Soybean oil had gone from 37 cents a pound to 28 cents a pound. From the high in August, Jim had lost nearly his entire net worth of $1.2 million and owed his friends an additional $400,000. Finally and mercifully, his firm pulled the plug on the trade. The firm took out Jim. He took him out of the trade because he could not take himself out. Jim committed many trading errors in this heartbreak of a trade. But first and foremost, as he himself tells it, he had become the trade, which goes back to those 6 things that ego makes us do. He had become the position in soybean oil. The trade was mixed up with who he himself was, and he couldn't extradite himself. He had egotized the trade and merged his ego with the outcome of the trade rather than the process. His early profits had represented to him a personal reflection of his capability. He became the trade. He was going to win and win big, and nothing could stop him except disaster and outside forces. His very identity was merged into the trade. So how do we separate our ego from our trading? How do we keep from personalizing a trade? How do we avoid personalizing all of our trading? She goes on to talk about boundaries that you can set. Again, you guys can grab this book and read it, right? But I think really where she ties it home is in these perceptual positions. She says another way to get some distance between yourself and your trading is to look at it from different perspectives. This is also true in relationships with other people. In most interactions with another person, there are 3 different and separate perceptual positions: the self position, the observer position, and the other position. The self position is looking through your own eyes, hearing what you hear, feeling what you feel, holding your own beliefs, and making your own interpretations. Most of us live our lives from this position. This is the position that gives you passion. It's where juice is. From this, we have access to some information, but not all of it. That's the key point. The observer position is that of a neutral observer, a fair witness. This is a disassociated position. Here, you watch yourself and the other person, or the trade. Here, you are in the role of the spectator as you listen to yourself and the other person. As an observer, you'll have a third party's commentary. This gives you an impartial view, but if you stay here too long, you could end up playing the role of the cold fish and not acting. Okay? So we have the self view, which is how we live most of our lives every day, and then we have the observer view. The last one is called the other position. This gives you the other person's point of view. Here you look at things through the eyes of the other, hold the other's feelings, walk and stand in the other's shoes. This position gives you the ability to identify with and through another person. Here, you see the world through another person's eyes and get a sense of what they're feeling. If you live too much in this position, you could be in danger of living in the doormat position. To explore the various perceptual positions, try this exercise. Recall a time when you had a mildly troubling face-to-face interaction with another person, perhaps a fight with your significant other. Quickly run through the experience through your own eyes, experiencing it from your own perspective. Watch the other person as you feel your own feelings and listen to what they're saying, and you're thinking. Look exactly out of your own eyes, not above them or below them. Listen with your own ears. Feel your own feelings. If any commentary voice belongs to another person, send that voice back to them and use your own voice as the commentary. Then move into the observer position. Become the fair witness. Be sure you're positioned halfway between yourself and the other person. If you're looking down on the people, position yourself at eye level. Refer to the two people by their names or he and she. Now move into the other position. Become the other person. Watch yourself from their perspective. Feel their feelings. Take on their views. Here, you may not be totally accurate, but your approximation of what they're thinking and feeling is important. In this position, you refer to the other as I and to yourself as you. Now, move between these 3 positions. You can uncouple your ego from your trading by periodically removing yourself to different perceptual positions. By going to the observer position, you can gain perspective and neutrality. Some successful traders move to the observer position when they put on a trade. If they're getting too involved in a trade, move to the observer position and look at it from that perspective. At the end of a given trade or at the end of a trading day, take a look at your trading from the fair witness position. You can also look at your trading through the eyes of another person, a trading buddy, a trading coach, or a trader you admire. What would they say about the trade? What would they think? What, if any, advice would they give you? See, so all of that is really helpful, in my opinion, as you start to get stuck into the trading. I see everybody's asking here, what is the name of the book? Exceptional Trading, The Mind Game by Ruth Barons Roosevelt. But like I was saying, as you get stuck into the trading, as you really start to fall into line with your routine, as you start to make your habits more routine and more habitual, these are the intellectual and internal beefs that you're going to come across. She goes on to say here that living beyond the ego is really where we can manifest our true destiny and where we can decouple the ego from the trading. It's by living beyond it. So here, according to Wayne Dyer, in his profound book, Manifest Your Destiny, we live our adult lives in 4 stages of psychological and spiritual development. The first stage is the time when our primary identification is with our physical body and how it functions in our everyday world. During this stage, we measure our worth and our happiness by our physical appearance and abilities. He calls this stage the athlete. We've all been there. The second stage, he calls the warrior. This is the time when we feel compelled to conquer the world and demonstrate our superiority in any field. At this stage, the ego dominates our lives. We are trying to establish our importance by differentiating ourselves from all others as separate and significant. I can relate to that when I started ASFX. Status and position in life are obsessions. This is the stage when we do what warriors do, conquer and claim the spoils for ourselves. The third stage he calls the statesman. At this stage, we become aware that our purpose is to give rather than to get. While we still may be achievers and quite often athletic, our inner drive is to serve others, not ourselves. At this stage, we move out of self-absorption and the ego loosens its grip. By moving our attention away from ourselves and instead towards the others, we become free. That's the third stage, the statement. The fourth stage he calls the spirit. At this stage, we move into our higher self. We become aware that we are infinite, limitless, immortal, universal, and eternal energy temporarily residing in a material body. We move beyond the athlete, beyond the warrior, beyond the statesman, and move into other areas of consciousness. We become aware that this infinite energy is in all other people and all other things. The energy has no boundary, no form, no limits, and no outer edge. We become a part of we become a part of a much larger time and world. In this fourth stage, we begin to manifest all that we desire. When we begin to trust the vital force in the universe that is a part of ourselves, and we really are in charge of our lives and our destinies, we can let go of our ego and all the attachments to the external world of ego. When you trust this force is within you and you are the force, an incredible lightness and freedom will fill you and you truly can step out of ego. So the reason I wanted to share that is because, like I said, I get a lot of questions from people about how to remove the ego from the trading. Now, we've kind of talked about that, but on top of that, I think what that chapter really does is it lays out a framework that we can see our own growth through. We can see ourselves becoming the athlete, the warrior, the statesman. We can see and relate to different aspects of our life at different stages. We're not just in the athlete stage in every form of our life, with our relationships, with our trading, with our business. It's a constant growth in all areas. Some are at level 1, some are at level 3, and it's our job to identify that, bring awareness to that, and then push ourselves through. Because again, detaching the ego from the trading, focusing on a process more than an outcome, those are the characteristics of winning traders. The book here is called Exceptional Trading because it's teaching you the way to think like an exceptional trader. So I hope that helps on the topic of removing the ego from trading. And I hope that you guys all grab the book because I highly recommend you read it. It talks about the psychological profile of winners versus losers. It's just a great book for any trader to read, especially a trader that's already got a system in place. It's not going to give you the tactics of how to trade. It's going to give you the tactics of how to conquer your own mind. And that's the most important thing once you find the trading system to work.